This is not about being anti-anything. This is about being pro-girls, pro-females, pro-women, pro-ladies. You can't be a male, born a male, transitioning to female, and think that you should have the right to compete with women. Not in basketball, not in football, not in boxing, not in the UFC.
Nobody expected yesterday's press conference to explode into complete sports media chaos, but everything changed when one coach made a controversial remark about men playing in the WNBA. Suddenly, Stephen A. Smith appeared fired up, delivering a reaction that was loud, intense, and almost impossible to ignore. So what exactly did the coach say that triggered such a massive response from one of sports media's biggest personalities? Buckle up, because the deeper you go into this story, the more unbelievable it gets.
The WNBA has opened up Pandora's box, fam. Alright, from the Seattle game against the Indiana Fever all the way to the Minnesota game against the Indiana Fever, there was shenanigans, right, in the Seattle arena with the co-owner getting suspended for 5 games, and then the Cheryl Reeve t-shirt. Y'all doing this against the most popular team in the league, and now all of a sudden you have inspired a trans player to join the league. Hey, I wonder if reporters mustered up the courage to ask Cheryl Reeve.
Two people caught up in the same WNBA controversy suddenly found themselves on completely opposite sides of the spotlight within just 1 week. While one faced a 5-game ban from her own arena along with a hefty fine, the other watched the controversy unfold from a very different position. And somehow, the drama only continued to escalate from there.
She shares her support for trans athletes. She's the coach of the Minnesota Lynx. She wore a shirt that said "Trans kids belong" before a game against Fever. Now, that could be a split-tongue comment. Be very careful, because they do belong. However, since you're in the setting of a WNBA game, do they belong now on a WNBA court is where people are taking it in assumption, right? Now, if you wore that shirt at an elementary school, then you'd be like, no problem.
The other showed up in a simple t-shirt, coached her team to a victory, and later faced the media after certain reporters had reportedly been kept out of the building that night. Neither person expected to become a central figure in the same heated WNBA debate, yet within days, both were suddenly at the heart of a controversy that had fans and media talking.
On that same vein, in that story with ESPN, you talked about wanting to protect young girls who shouldn't have to go against biological men. Just can you expand your viewpoint on that?
I mean, I think I said what I said. I think it's kind of common sense.
From the Stephen A. Smith show, where he decided to jump out there and let WNBA coach for the Minnesota Lynx, Cheryl Reeve, have it for what she had been doing for these last couple days, what she said in that press conference in response to Sophie Cunningham, then going to the game and wearing that shirt to push the message that she was trying to get out there even more.
And when you compare how the two situations were handled, the contrast starts to reveal something far bigger than one fine, one suspension, or one explosive headline. It all began on a Tuesday night in Seattle, inside Climate Pledge Arena, where the Storm hosted the Fever, a team that had somehow become the center of attention in nearly every major conversation surrounding women's basketball.
We gotta stop this. We gotta stop acting like somebody that's speaking up on behalf of girls, like a Sophie Cunningham, like a Riley Gaines, are scourges of the earth. You are Cheryl Reeve, the head coach of the Minnesota Lynx. That is an irresponsible thing to do. You are a coach for a female basketball team. Do you not think that the females are being screwed over if they have to compete against a individual born as a male?
Outside the arena, a small group had gathered to support Fever guard Sophie Cunningham, who had publicly voiced her views about transgender athletes competing in women's sports. Inside, two teenage fans were reportedly sitting courtside wearing XX and XY shirts and holding signs thanking Cunningham for speaking out. According to accounts that later circulated, the girls said a member of the Storm organization confronted them over their support, sparking a heated exchange that quickly became part of the national sports conversation. The atmosphere inside the arena was already tense, with opposing messages about transgender rights appearing among the crowd and around the venue. In other words, the confrontation didn't happen in a vacuum. The building was already divided over a deeply controversial issue, and the alleged exchange became the flashpoint that brought all of that tension into the spotlight.
Stuff up, man. The WNBA can't stay out of its own way, but for us, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Cheryl Reeve doesn't want men coaching in the WNBA, but she's okay with men playing in the WNBA. Stephen A. Smith absolutely went at and blasted Cheryl Reeve on his pod. A WNBA coach who wore a Trans Kids Belong shirt, the troll Sophie Cunningham, gets upset whenever men take coaching jobs from women.
The detail that made this controversy feel like more than a coincidence was the timing. Several outlets, including Fox News and Outkick, reportedly requested media credentials for the game well before the team's deadline, yet those requests were allegedly denied without an explanation. There's no confirmed evidence connecting those decisions to the controversy surrounding the shirts, but the timing immediately caught reporters' attention. Suddenly, a story that started with a t-shirt at a basketball game had become a much bigger question. Who gets access to the arena, and who gets the chance to ask about what happened inside? And that's where the story gets even more complicated. The coach's previous public comments on related issues appeared to raise questions about how her various positions fit together. On one hand, she has spoken about protecting opportunities for women in sports. On the other, the broader debate centers on whether biological sex should determine eligibility in women's basketball. Those are deeply divisive questions, and that night, few people seemed willing to challenge the apparent tension between the two arguments.
Stephen A. Smith, scorch earth on Cheryl Reeve and the WNBA, dog. Y'all can hear Stephen A. was just cooking. I mean, that man had the stove on, the oven, the microwave, the crock pot, whatever could cook, he was cooking it, all right? And honestly, it might be too late, Stephen A. It might be too late to try to actually make sense of it all, because now you have a 6'3" French trans phenom averaging 20 and 20. Julie, okay? Everybody meet Julie, ladies and
Naturally, this was exactly the kind of controversy Stephen A. Smith wasn't going to ignore, and he didn't. Appearing on ESPN, Smith made his position clear from the beginning, emphasizing that he said his argument was not about targeting anyone, but about what he believes is fairness for girls and women competing in sports. He argued that transgender women who went through male puberty should not compete against women in sports where physical differences can affect competition, pointing to basketball, football, boxing, UFC, and even tennis. He specifically brought up tennis to illustrate his broader argument that the debate isn't simply about opinions or emotions. In his view, measurable physical differences between elite male and female athletes have to be part of the conversation. From there, Smith turned his attention directly toward the coach involved in the controversy, and that's when his segment shifted from a general discussion about sports policy into a much sharper challenge of her position.
Stephen A. Smith. I agree with Stephen A. Smith on almost nothing these days. But the one thing that Stephen A. Smith has not backed down from and has been vocal about and is now come out smashing the hell out of Cheryl Reeve, it's the idea of letting trans people in the women's locker rooms, in the women's bathrooms, in the women's sports. Stephen A. Smith, regardless of him working for ESPN, said, nah, I'm not down with that.
Smith pushed the argument even further, questioning how a head coach responsible for a roster of women could dismiss concerns about competitive differences and portray outspoken critics such as Cunningham and retired swimmer Riley Gaines as the problem rather than as athletes raising questions about fairness. He also criticized the controversial shirt, arguing that someone in a leadership position should have chosen a serious discussion over making a politically charged statement during a nationally televised game. According to Smith's framing, the consequences extend far beyond one night. The league is still trying to expand its audience. Sponsors generally want to avoid becoming trapped in cultural battles, and ultimately, the business side of professional sports is driven by what attracts viewers and generates revenue. Smith also emphasized that, in his view, the issue was about athletic competition rather than hostility toward transgender people, but then came the twist that made the entire segment even more explosive. Just as Smith was wrapping up his argument, the hypothetical debate he had been discussing suddenly felt much more real, because an athlete connected to the controversy stepped onto the court, ready to turn the entire conversation into something much bigger than a television debate.
Dude, Stephen A. Smith. Yet again proving how aloof a person can be. Backing Sophie Cunningham yet again, he used the defense of, it's protecting women, protecting girls. Well, that's just bullshit. After Ray Rice struck his then-fiancée Janae Palmer, Stephen A. Smith went on First Take and said, what I've tried to employ to the female members of my family is let's make sure we don't do anything to provoke wrong actions.
Her name is Julie Tarter, a 34-year-old, 6'3" center who has reportedly played in France's second-tier women's basketball system after previously competing in men's basketball before coming out as transgender in 2021. During the 2025-26 season, reports surrounding her performance painted a remarkable picture, with claims that she averaged around 21 points and 20 rebounds per game and reached 30 rebounds in a single contest, numbers that would make her one of the division's most productive players. Another transgender player, 43-year-old Aurora Pau, was also reportedly competing in the same division and producing solid numbers. Yet Pau was not included among the postseason honors, leading to competing interpretations of what happened. Critics viewed the omission as evidence that concerns about competitive fairness were being ignored, while advocates argued that it reflected the kind of exclusion transgender athletes have faced for years, and that's what makes the debate so complicated. Depending on where someone stands, the exact same result can look like either a response to competitive concerns or evidence of discrimination. The numbers may be straightforward, but the argument surrounding them is anything but.
And in this video here, you have Cheryl Reeve talking about how now, because of the influx in money in the WNBA, which is all because of Caitlin Clark, make no mistake about it, Caitlin Clark changed the economy of the WNBA, got everyone rich. And she said because of that influx in money, the NBA teams, they want their teams back and all of this. And now there were coaches fired, and the coaches now are men coming from the NBA, like the New York Liberty and some other teams. And basically she went on this whole tangent about how she doesn't want men coaching in the WNBA because women aren't coaching in the NBA as head coaches.